My husband stole $60,000 from me while I was sleeping to support his mistress. This story I'm about to tell you is 100% true and may make you rethink who you choose to be with. I woke up that Tuesday morning with a strange heaviness in my chest. Something felt wrong, but I couldn't name it yet. Richard, my husband, had already left for work. No goodbye kiss. No coffee made. Just silence filling our Portland home like a warning I was too slow to hear. I poured myself coffee with shaking hands I didn't understand. Opened my laptop at the kitchen island. Just a routine check of my accounts before starting my day. The number on the screen didn't make sense. My savings account. The one I'd built over 20 years of hard work, client by client, design project by design project. $60,000. Gone. Transferred at 3:47 a.m. while I slept beside the man I trusted with everything. The coffee cup slipped from my fingers. Shattered on the marble floor I'd chosen myself. Brown liquid spread like blood across white stone. My hands flew to my phone. Called the bank. Waited through endless hold music while my heart tried to break through my ribs. Yes, ma'am. The transaction was authorized. Your credentials were used. No, ma'am, we cannot reverse it. Richard. It had to be Richard. He was the only one who could have accessed my laptop. Who knew where I kept my passwords written in that small notebook in my nightstand drawer. Who I'd trusted completely after my first marriage nearly destroyed me. Before continuing, if this story is touching your heart, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Don't forget to ring the notification bell, because every day I'm bringing you stories of women who turn their deepest pain into a new good way of living their lives. I called him. My voice barely worked. He answered on the fourth ring, irritated. Busy, he said. Important meeting. Someone took $60,000 from my account last night, I whispered. The pause that followed told me everything. Then came his voice, sharp with manufactured outrage. What are you accusing me of? How dare you? After everything I've done for you? This is exactly why we have problems. You don't trust me. You never have. The words hit like slaps. Made me doubt my own eyes. My own instincts. But something small and cold was waking up inside me. Something that remembered being fooled before. Being manipulated before. I hung up without another word. Stood alone in my kitchen surrounded by broken porcelain and spilled coffee, staring at our wedding photo on the wall. That man smiling beside me in the picture. Handsome in his gray suit. Promising me safety. Promising me partnership. Promising me I'd never be alone again. Who was he really? And what else had I been blind to? The rest of that morning passed in a blur of panic and disbelief. I sat on the floor of my kitchen for what felt like hours. The broken cup still scattered around me. My phone clutched in both hands like a lifeline. I wanted to believe him. God, how desperately I wanted to believe Richard's indignation was real. That I was paranoid. Damaged from my first marriage. Seeing monsters where there were none. But the numbers didn't lie. $60,000. Gone. I called Maggie. She arrived within 30 minutes. Didn't even knock, just used her spare key and found me still on the floor. Her face went pale when she saw me. What happened? She asked, kneeling beside me. I told her everything. The missing money. Richard's reaction. The way he'd turned it around on me. Made me feel crazy for even asking. Maggie's jaw tightened. That expression I knew so well. The one that meant she was holding back words she'd wanted to say for a long time. I need to tell you something, she said quietly. And you're not going to want to hear it. My stomach dropped. I never trusted him. From the beginning. She looked at me with those dark eyes full of pain. I saw things. Small things. The way he'd check his phone constantly at dinners and angle it away. How he'd volunteer to run errands alone when we were all together. Those business trips that seemed excessive. The way he'd describe his coworkers but never mention that young secretary. I felt my face flush hot. You never said anything. Because you were happy. Or I thought you were. After everything David put you through, you deserve to be happy. She gripped my hand. But I should have said something. I'm so sorry. I pulled away. Stood up. Started pacing. My first marriage had been a different kind of hell. David's verbal abuse. His constant criticism. The way he made me feel small and worthless for 15 years. When I finally left at 52, I was broken. Convinced I'd never trust anyone again. Then Richard appeared at a charity event I'd designed. Charming. Attentive. Everything David wasn't. He pursued me gently. Patiently. Made me feel seen after years of invisibility. We married after dating for 18 months. I thought I'd found my second chance. My proof that good men existed. What a fool I'd been. Maggie was on her phone. Making calls. Within 2 hours, she'd found a private investigator. A woman named Lisa Chin who specialized in infidelity cases. I don't know if I want to know, I whispered. You need to know, Maggie said firmly. Whatever's happening, you need the truth. Lisa came to my house that evening. Professional. Direct. She asked questions that made me nauseous. Had I noticed changes in his routine? New expenses? Unexplained absences? Yes. All of it. I just hadn't let myself see the pattern. She quoted me a price. I didn't hesitate. Wrote the check with trembling hands. Give me 48 hours, Lisa said. Those 2 days were torture. Richard came home that first night acting wounded. Hurt that I'd accused him. He slept in the guest room. Said he needed space from my paranoia. I lay awake in our bed, staring at the ceiling. Replaying every moment of our 3-year marriage. Looking for clues I'd missed. The smell of unfamiliar perfume on his collar last month. Explained away as a hug from a client. The new cologne. The gym membership he suddenly cared about. The way he'd started styling his hair differently. Classic signs. I'd read about them after David. Promised myself I'd never ignore red flags again. Yet here I was. Maggie stayed with me during the day. Brought food I couldn't eat. Let me talk in circles. Held me when I cried. On the second evening, Lisa called. I need you to come to my office, she said. Her voice was gentle but serious. Bring your friend. The drive downtown felt like moving through water. Everything slow and distorted. Lisa's office was small but organized. She gestured for us to sit. Slid a manila folder across her desk. I'm sorry, she said simply. I opened it with numb fingers. The first photo showed Richard and a young blonde woman at an expensive restaurant. His hand covering hers on the table. The expression on his face tender. Intimate. The way he used to look at me. I flipped to the next photo. The two of them entering a hotel. The Heathman. Downtown Portland's nicest. Next photo. In a parking garage. His arms around her waist. Her face tilted up to his. About to kiss or just finished. My vision blurred. Her name is Amber Costa, Lisa said quietly. 28 years old. She's the executive secretary at Sterling and Associates. His firm. Of course. The secretary Maggie mentioned. The one Richard always failed to bring up when talking about work. But there's more, Lisa continued. She pulled out more documents. Financial records. I accessed public databases and some other sources. They opened a joint bank account together 3 weeks ago. $55,000 was deposited into it. My $60,000. $5,000 short. Probably spent on hotels and restaurants and gifts for her. There's also this. Lisa showed me printouts of internet searches from Richard's work computer. Real estate listings. For properties in the Cayman Islands. One-way flights. How to transfer money internationally. He was planning to leave, I heard myself say. To disappear with her. With my money. Maggie made a sound beside me. Rage and grief mixed together. I'm afraid so, Lisa confirmed. Based on the search dates and the flight patterns I found, I'd estimate he was planning to go within the next 2 weeks. I stared at the photos. This blonde girl with her perfect manicure and tight dresses. Young enough to be his daughter. Looking at my husband like he was her prize. Did she know? I asked. About me? Lisa nodded. I found text messages. She knows you exist. She doesn't care. The cruelty of it hit me like a physical blow. I paid this woman. Thanked her. Took the folder of evidence that proved my life was a lie. Maggie drove me home. Walked me inside. Made me tea I didn't drink. I spread the photos across my dining table. Stared at them until they blurred together. Richard came home near midnight. Saw me sitting there in the dark. Saw the photos illuminated by the single lamp. His face went white. Then red. What the hell is this? His voice was ice. I think you know what it is, I said. My voice steadier than I expected. And something shifted. Something cold and hard settled into my chest. Replacing the panic. The self-doubt. The desperate need to believe in him. I wasn't going to be a victim again. Not this time. The silence between us stretched like a wire about to snap. Richard's eyes darted from the photos to me. Back to the photos. I watched him calculate. Saw the exact moment he decided on his strategy. This isn't what it looks like, he started. I laughed. Actually laughed. The sound was bitter and foreign in my own mouth. It looks like you're having an affair with your secretary. It looks like you stole $60,000 from my account. It looks like you were planning to abandon me and flee the country with her. I pushed the photos toward him. So please. Tell me what it actually is. He changed tactics. Went on the offensive. You had me followed? His voice rose with manufactured outrage. You hired someone to spy on me? That's insane. That's controlling and paranoid and exactly the kind of behavior that's been destroying our marriage. The gaslighting was textbook. I'd read about it. Studied it after David. Recognized every manipulation technique. It didn't work anymore. Don't, I said quietly. Don't insult me by pretending I'm crazy. I have bank records. I have photos. I have proof of the account you opened with her. I pointed to the door. Get out of my house. Your house. He sneered. We're married. This is community property. We live in Oregon. This house was mine before we married. You have no claim to it. I stood up. My legs surprisingly steady. Get out. Now. You're going to regret this, he said. His mask fully dropped now. The charm gone, revealing something cold and cruel underneath. You're not going to find anyone else at your age. You're going to end up alone. A bitter old woman who drove away the only man willing to put up with her damage. The words were designed to wound. To make me doubt myself. To make me beg him to stay. Instead, I walked to the front door. Opened it wide. Get out. He grabbed his keys. Stormed past me. Turned back at the threshold. This isn't over, he hissed. No, I agreed. It's not. I closed the door. Locked it. Leaned against it until I heard his car roar away. Then I slid down to the floor and let myself break. Maggie found me there at dawn. Let herself in when I didn't answer her texts. Held me while I sobbed. For the marriage that never really existed. For the trust I'd given so freely. For being fooled again despite all my promises to myself. But grief has a limit. Eventually, it turns to something else. Rage. Before we continue, make sure to like this video and subscribe. With your support, we can keep bringing more stories from powerful women that touch the heart of all of us. That morning, Maggie drove me to see Daniel Hoffman. A lawyer she knew from her work in real estate. Specialized in family law and fraud cases. His office overlooked the Willamette River. Calm and professional. He was in his early 60s. White hair. Kind eyes that had seen too many stories like mine. I laid it all out. The theft. The affair. The planned escape. Slid the folder of evidence across his desk. He reviewed everything methodically. Making notes. His expression growing more serious. This is substantial evidence, he said finally. We can definitely pursue criminal charges for the theft. The fraud. He paused. But I need to tell you something. My stomach tightened. Your husband has done this before. What? He pulled up something on his computer. Turned the screen toward me. Court records. Richard Palmer was married previously. To a woman named Karen Palmer. She filed a civil suit against him 8 years ago for financial fraud. Similar circumstances. Money disappeared from joint accounts. Evidence of an affair. She was preparing to press criminal charges. What happened? Maggie asked. She dropped everything. Withdrew the suit. Disappeared from public record. Daniel looked at me carefully. Cases like that usually mean either a settlement with an NDA or the victim was too emotionally devastated to continue. I need to talk to her, I said immediately. That might not be possible. She's not easy to find. Try, I insisted. Please. It took Daniel's investigator 3 days to locate Karen Palmer. She was living in Seattle. Working as a bookkeeper. Divorced, obviously. No remarriage. Daniel called her. Explained the situation. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then, I'll meet with her. We drove to Seattle on a gray Saturday morning. Met Karen at a quiet coffee shop in Capitol Hill. I recognized her pain the moment I saw her. It was written in the tiredness around her eyes. The way she held her coffee cup with both hands like she needed the warmth. She was 54. Thin. Pretty in a faded way that spoke of someone who'd stopped caring about appearance. We sat down. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Karen looked at me. Really looked at me. He did it to you too, she said. Not a question. Yes. She nodded slowly. Took a sip of coffee. How much did he take? 60,000. He took 40 from me. Her voice was flat. Told me he needed it for a business investment. By the time I realized what happened, he and his girlfriend were in Mexico. Came back when the money ran out. Begged forgiveness. Said he'd been having a breakdown. I believed him. She laughed bitterly. For 6 more months I believed him. What made you finally leave? I found out about the second girlfriend. She met my eyes. He was running the same scam simultaneously. 2 women. 2 sets of stolen money. When I confronted him, he told me I was worthless. That no one would believe me over him. That I'd been a bad wife and deserved everything he did. The familiarity of it made me nauseous. I filed suit, Karen continued. Was ready to send him to prison. Then one night he showed up at my apartment. Didn't threaten me directly. Just talked about how ugly trials get. How much they cost. How my name would be dragged through every paper. How his lawyer would make me look unstable. She stared into her coffee. I was already so broken. I couldn't face it. So I dropped everything. Took what little he agreed to give back. Moved away. I'm so sorry, I whispered. Don't be sorry. Fight. She reached into her purse. Pulled out a worn envelope. I kept copies. Of everything. Bank statements. Emails. Records I wasn't supposed to have. She pushed it across the table. I kept them for 8 years thinking maybe someday I'd be brave enough to use them. But I wasn't. She opened the envelope. Spread out documents. Richard has a 3rd bank account. An LLC registered in Delaware under a shell company name. He uses it to hide money from his wives. From the IRS. From everyone. She pointed to account numbers. Routing numbers. This is where he puts everything before moving it offshore. My heart was pounding. How do you know he still has it? Because men like Richard don't change their patterns. They just find new victims. Karen looked at me with something fierce in her eyes. Make him pay. Do what I couldn't. Send him to prison. I took the documents with shaking hands. We spent another hour together. 2 women connected by the same predator. By the time we left, something had shifted. Karen looked lighter. Like handing over those documents had released something she'd carried too long. On the drive back to Portland, I felt Maggie glance at me. You okay? No, I said honestly. But I will be. Because now I had everything. Bank records. Photos. A pattern of behavior. Evidence of hidden accounts and systematic fraud. Richard had made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated me. He'd thought I'd be like Karen. Too broken to fight. Too ashamed to speak up. Too scared of him to pursue justice. But I'd already been broken once. By David. I'd already crawled out of that darkness. I knew how to survive. And this time, I was going to do more than survive. I was going to win. Daniel Hoffman moved fast once he had Karen's documents. Within 24 hours, he'd verified everything. The shell company. The hidden LLC account. The money trail leading from my savings to Richard's secret holdings to planned international transfers. But we need more than civil action here, Daniel said during our emergency meeting Monday morning. This is criminal fraud. Wire fraud. Identity theft. Potentially money laundering. He picked up his phone. I'm calling someone at the Portland Police Bureau. Financial Crimes Unit. My stomach fluttered with nerves and something else. Hope, maybe. Or the beginning of vindication. 2 hours later, Detective Sarah Morrison sat in Daniel's office with us. She was younger than I expected. Mid-40s, with sharp eyes and an economy of movement that spoke of efficiency. She reviewed the documents methodically. Asked pointed questions. Took notes in neat handwriting. "This is solid," she said finally. "Really solid." She looked at me. "But I need to tell you up front that cases like this take time. Weeks, sometimes months. And they're not easy to prosecute if the defendant has a good lawyer." "He'll have a good lawyer," I said. "He works for an accounting firm. He knows people." Sarah nodded. "That's why we need to be thorough." She tapped Karen's documents. "This pattern of behavior is crucial. It establishes intent. Predation." She paused. "I'm going to need to speak with his ex-wife directly. Get her statement on record." "I'll call her," I offered. Karen agreed to come back to Portland. To give her official statement. To face the man who'd destroyed her financially and emotionally 8 years ago. I picked her up from the train station that Wednesday. We didn't talk much on the drive to the police station. But I felt her anxiety like a physical presence in the car. "You don't have to do this," I told her at a red light. "Yes, I do," she said quietly. "For both of us." Her interview with Sarah took 3 hours. I waited in a conference room, drinking terrible coffee and watching the clock. When they emerged, Karen looked exhausted but determined. Sarah looked energized. "I'm opening a formal investigation," Sarah announced. "And there's something else." She glanced between us. "I did some preliminary checking on Richard Palmer's employment. Ran his name through our database. There are irregularities at his firm. Client complaints. Missing funds. Small amounts, but consistent. He's been under internal review for 6 weeks. My mouth went dry. He never mentioned that. Because he knew it was closing in. Sarah's expression was grim. Your $60,000 wasn't just about running away with his girlfriend. It was his escape plan from multiple problems. He was about to be fired. Possibly prosecuted by his own clients. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Our marriage had never been about love. It had been about access. To my money. My stability. My home. Insurance for when his house of cards collapsed. "How long before you can arrest him?" Maggie asked. She'd insisted on being there for everything. "We need to move carefully." Sarah pulled out her phone. Made a call. Spoke in low tones. Hung up and turned back to us. "We're going to execute a search warrant on his office tomorrow morning. Seize his computers. Bank records. If we find what I think we'll find, we'll bring him in for questioning." "What should I do?" I asked. "Nothing," Sarah said firmly. "Don't contact him. Don't respond if he contacts you. Let us handle it." She met my eyes. "And be prepared. Men like this don't go quietly. When they realize they're caught, they either crumble or they attack. Sometimes both." That night, Richard called me for the first time since I'd kicked him out. I didn't answer. He called 6 more times. Then the voicemails started. The first was angry. Threatening legal action. Accusing me of slander. Saying he'd sue me for everything I had. The second was different. Softer. Almost vulnerable. "Please," he said. His voice thick like he'd been crying. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But we can fix this. I love you. I made mistakes, but I love you. Please don't do this. Please don't destroy everything we built together. We can go to counseling. Work it out. I'll do anything. Just please call me back. The manipulation was textbook. The cycle of abuse David had taught me to recognize. Rage, then charm. Threats, then pleading. Anything to regain control. I deleted the voicemails without listening to the rest. Maggie stayed at my house that night. We sat in my living room with the doors locked. Neither of us said it out loud, but we were both afraid Richard might show up. He didn't. The next morning, Sarah called me at 7 a.m. We executed the warrant. Found exactly what we needed. Richard's computer had detailed records. Transfers. Communications with Amber about timing. Plans for fake identities. She paused. He also had files on you. Your passwords. Your mother's maiden name. Every security question answer. He'd been documenting how to access your accounts for months. The premeditation of it made me feel violated in a new way. We're bringing him in this afternoon for questioning, Sarah continued. But there's something else you should know. What? We're investigating Amber Costa as well. She wasn't just the girlfriend. She's the executive secretary with access to client files, partner passwords, financial records. We believe she was actively helping him steal from the firm. She's complicit in multiple crimes. Good, I said. The word came out harder than I intended. That afternoon dragged. I couldn't work. Couldn't focus. Just paced my house waiting for Sarah's call. It came at 4:30. Richard lawyered up immediately. Won't say a word. But Amber is a different story. Sarah's voice carried a hint of satisfaction. She's 28. No prior record. Facing serious prison time. And she just figured out that Richard was married. That she wasn't special. That he'd done this before with other women. She's turning on him? She's singing like a canary. Full confession. In exchange for immunity on the firm theft and reduced charges on your case. She's giving us everything. Dates. Amounts. Text messages. The whole plan. I sat down hard on my kitchen floor. Relief and rage washing over me in waves. Can I see it? I asked. The confession? Not yet. But soon. Sarah hesitated. There's one more thing. We found flight reservations. For this Friday. 2 tickets to Grand Cayman. One way. They were leaving in 3 days. 3 days. I'd stopped him with 3 days to spare. That night, the news broke. Local accounting firm under investigation. Senior manager arrested. The details were vague but the implications clear. My phone exploded with messages. Friends who'd met Richard. Colleagues who knew him. Everyone shocked. Everyone supportive. Everyone saying they'd always thought something was off about him. Where were those instincts when I needed them? I thought bitterly. But I knew that wasn't fair. I was the one who'd married him. Who'd ignored red flags because I was lonely. Because I wanted so desperately to believe in second chances. The preliminary hearing was set for the following week. Richard posted bail. $50,000. I wondered whose money he'd used. His lawyer filed a motion to dismiss. Claimed the evidence was obtained illegally. That Karen's documents were inadmissible. That I was a bitter, vindictive ex-wife manufacturing charges. Daniel shut it all down methodically. The evidence was solid. Multiple witnesses. A clear pattern. Financial records that couldn't be explained away. The Friday that Richard and Amber were supposed to fly to Grand Cayman, Sarah called with an update. "We have a problem." My blood went cold. What kind of problem? Richard transferred money out of the LLC account 2 days before his arrest. $200,000. We're trying to trace where it went, but he used a cryptocurrency exchange. It's complicated. He's still stealing, I said flatly. Or hiding assets before trial, Sarah agreed. We're working with federal agents now. The FBI handles international wire fraud. This is bigger than we initially thought. The scope of Richard's crimes kept expanding. Every time I thought I understood the full picture, another layer revealed itself. How many other women? I wondered. How many other victims who'd been too scared or too ashamed to come forward? The thought haunted me. 3 weeks after Richard's arrest, the prosecution offered him a deal. Plead guilty to wire fraud and theft in the first degree. Agree to full restitution. Serve a minimum of 3 years with possibility of parole. He refused. He's going to trial, Daniel told me. His lawyer thinks they can create reasonable doubt. Paint you and Karen as vindictive exes conspiring against him. Can they? Fear crept into my voice. No, Daniel said firmly. The evidence is overwhelming. Bank records don't lie. Amber's testimony is damning. And we have his own computer files. He glanced at me. But trials are unpredictable. Juries are unpredictable. You need to be prepared for this to get ugly. It got ugly fast. Richard's lawyer filed character assassination motions. Subpoenaed my medical records from therapy after my first divorce. Tried to paint me as mentally unstable. A woman who couldn't maintain relationships. Who drove men away with paranoia and control. Every old wound was ripped open and displayed publicly. I wanted to quit. To withdraw everything. To just take whatever money I could get back and disappear. But then I thought of Karen. Of her 8 years of silence. Of the weight she'd carried. Of the envelope she'd kept hidden like a shameful secret. And I thought of the other women. The ones Richard would find if he wasn't stopped. Because men like him never stopped on their own. So I didn't quit. I showed up to every hearing. Sat in every courtroom. Looked Richard in the eye every single time. And watched him slowly realize he wasn't going to win. The trial date was set. 6 months away. But 2 weeks before trial, something broke. The FBI finished tracing the cryptocurrency transfers. Found 3 more hidden accounts. 2 more shell companies. And evidence that Richard had been embezzling from his firm for nearly 5 years. Nearly $500,000. The federal charges made the state charges look minor in comparison. Richard's lawyer came back to the table. New offer, plead guilty to all charges. 8 years federal prison. Full restitution to all victims including the firm and myself. Permanent ban from financial services. This time, Richard accepted. Sarah called me with the news on a Tuesday afternoon. It's over, she said simply. He took the deal. He'll be sentenced in 2 weeks. I hung up. Stared at my phone. Over. After 3 months of investigation. 6 weeks of hearings. Endless stress and fear and reliving trauma. Over. I walked out to my garden. Sat on the bench Richard and I had picked out together. Back when I'd thought we were building a life. And I let myself cry. Not from sadness this time. From relief. The courtroom was cold the day of Richard's sentencing. I sat in the front row. Maggie on one side, Karen on the other. Daniel Hoffman behind us. A row of women united by one man's cruelty. Richard was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit. No expensive suit. No styled hair. No charming smile. He looked smaller somehow. Diminished. The mask he'd worn so well finally stripped away completely. He didn't look at me. Kept his eyes on the floor. On the table. On his lawyer. Anywhere but the women he'd destroyed. The judge was a woman in her 60s. Judge Patricia Reynolds. She reviewed the case file with the thoroughness of someone who'd seen too many men like Richard. The prosecution presented their case. The full scope of his crimes laid out in brutal detail. 8 years of embezzlement. 3 wives defrauded. Multiple girlfriends used as accomplices. A systematic pattern of predation and theft. Then it was time for victim impact statements. Karen went first. She walked to the podium with her hands clasped together. Read from a prepared statement in a voice that only shook slightly. She talked about the 8 years she'd lost. The therapy. The broken credit. The fear of trusting anyone ever again. The shame of being fooled. The weight of silence. When you stole from me, she said, looking directly at Richard for the first time, you didn't just take money. You took my sense of safety. My ability to trust my own judgment. You made me feel worthless and stupid. She paused. But I'm not worthless. And I'm not stupid. You're a predator. And I'm so grateful you're finally being held accountable. She walked back to her seat with her head high. I squeezed her hand. Then it was my turn. I stood on shaking legs. Walked to the podium. Looked at Judge Reynolds. Your Honor, I began. My voice steadier than I expected. I'm 55 years old. I've been divorced once before. From an emotionally abusive man who spent 15 years making me feel small. When I finally left that marriage, I promised myself I'd never ignore red flags again. I'd never let fear of loneliness make me settle. I'd never trust blindly. I glanced at Richard. He was staring at the table. Then I met this man. And he seemed perfect. Patient. Kind. Supportive. Everything I thought I deserved after years of pain. I took a breath. So I trusted him. Married him. Gave him access to my home. My finances. My heart. The courtroom was silent. And he systematically planned to destroy me. Not in a moment of weakness. Not because of some crisis or breakdown. But carefully. Methodically. Over months. He documented my passwords. Studied my security questions. Waited until I was asleep to steal from me. Planned to abandon me and flee the country with money I'd earned through 20 years of hard work. My voice broke slightly. The money was devastating. But the betrayal was worse. The knowledge that someone I loved had looked at me and seen only an opportunity. A mark. Someone to exploit. I looked directly at Richard now. Forced him to meet my eyes. You made me doubt myself. My judgment. My worth. You tried to make me feel crazy for suspecting the truth. And when I had proof, you tried to intimidate me into silence. She paused. But I'm not silent. And I'm not ashamed. You should be. I returned to my seat. Maggie's hand found mine. The judge looked at Richard. Stand up, she said. He stood. His lawyer beside him. Judge Reynolds read through the charges. The plea agreement. The recommendations. Then she looked at Richard over her glasses. Mr. Palmer, you are 58 years old. You have a degree in finance. Professional credentials. Every advantage. Yet you chose to prey on women who trusted you. To exploit their vulnerability. To steal not just money but peace of mind. Security. Self-worth. She paused. Your crimes were not crimes of desperation or necessity. They were crimes of entitlement. Of arrogance. Of believing you were smart enough to never face consequences. Richard's jaw tightened. I'm sentencing you to 8 years in federal prison. Full restitution to all victims. And I'm recommending you serve every day of that sentence without early parole. She closed the file. This court is adjourned. The gavel came down. It was over. Richard was led away. He looked back once. Not at me. At nothing really. Just a man facing the reality of his choices. Outside the courthouse, Karen and I stood together in the spring sunshine. Thank you, she said quietly. For finishing what I started. Thank you, I replied. For giving me the tools to fight. We hugged. 2 survivors. 2 women who'd found strength in each other's stories. 3 months later, I received a check from the court. $48,000. Restitution from Richard's seized assets. Not the full $60,000, but close enough. The remaining $12,000 was gone. Spent on hotels and restaurants and gifts for Amber. Money I'd never see again. But I realized I didn't care about that money. Not really. What I cared about was the lesson. The hard-won knowledge that I could trust myself again. That my instincts had been right. That I wasn't crazy or paranoid or damaged beyond repair. I was strong. Stronger than Richard had believed. Stronger than I'd believed. I reopened my design business with new energy. Started taking on bigger projects. Raised my rates. Stopped undervaluing my work. And then, one afternoon in late August, my phone rang. The caller was hesitant. Nervous. I found your number through a friend, she said. I think my husband is stealing from me. I don't know who else to call. Everyone tells me I'm imagining things, but I know something's wrong and I don't know what to do, Anne. I stopped her gently. Take a breath, I said. Tell me everything. Start from the beginning. And I listened. To a story that sounded painfully familiar. A woman doubting herself. Afraid to trust her instincts. Worried about being alone. Making excuses for suspicious behavior. I gave her names. Detective Sarah Morrison. Attorney Daniel Hoffman. Investigator Lisa Chin. I told her she wasn't crazy. Wasn't paranoid. That her fear was valid and her instincts were probably right. Thank you, she whispered. You don't know how much I needed to hear that. After I hung up, I sat in my office. Looked out the window at the city below. The late afternoon sun painting everything gold. Richard had tried to destroy me. Had come so close to succeeding. But I'd survived. Fought back. Won. And now I could help others do the same. My pain had purpose. My story had power. I thought about the woman on the phone. About Karen. About all the women who'd been made to feel small and wrong and crazy by men who saw them as prey. We deserved better. We deserved justice. We deserved to be believed. And slowly, one story at a time, we were learning to believe ourselves. I opened my laptop. Started drafting an email to a women's shelter about volunteering. Offering free design consultations. Creating beautiful spaces for women rebuilding their lives. Turning my expertise into service. My trauma into purpose. Richard was in prison. Amber was serving a reduced sentence. The firm had paid out settlements to all the defrauded clients. Justice had been slow, but it had been real. And I was free. Finally, completely free. Not just from Richard, but from the shame, the self-doubt, the fear that I'd always be a victim. I was a survivor, a fighter, a woman who'd looked at the worst parts of human nature and refused to be broken by it. The sun set over Portland. My city. My home. My life. And I smiled. Because tomorrow, I'd wake up in my own house. On my own terms. Owing nothing to anyone who'd tried to take from me. I'd survived betrayal twice now. Had walked through fire and come out stronger. Whatever came next, I was ready. If this story moved you, click on the next video that's appearing on the screen now. I'm sure you'll be surprised by this new emotional and heartbreaking story I have right here to tell you.